Thank you again. Let's move on. We're going to do a brief pattern before our lunch break.
在我们中午之前，在我们这个
Before lunch.
在我们午饭之前呢，我们刚才做了一个小小的环节。
It's a pattern that was developed by Richard Bandler.
它是 Richard Bandler 他创始的一个环节。
To deal with anxiety.
它是用来处理这个焦虑的。
I want to tell you that I'm not meaning that you will solve the whole anxiety with one technique, okay?
我并不是告诉大家说，通过这一个技术就能处理我们所有的焦虑。
Sometimes an anxiety, a panic, or something, it's something complex.
有时候呢，这个焦虑啊、恐怖，它们是很复杂的东西。
And it needs other tools, other things that you can do independent of the technique.
它需要你些其他的一些工具，或者其他的一些基于这些焦虑、恐怖这些治疗的这些方法。
But on the other hand, I think that using those patterns helps the person to deal with the things in another way, helps the person to start thinking different about the problem.
NLP 的目标呢，就是帮助一个人从另一个角度方式来考虑这件事情。
When I started to study NLP 20 years ago,
当我
20 years ago, I started to study.
当我20年前开始学习 NLP 的时候。
I was very curious about it. I had no idea that I would use it or teach it.
我对它是充满了那个好奇，我根本不知道该如何的使用它，如何处理它。
But when I started to use it in my life,
当我把它用在我自己的生活里
and in my clients' life,
用在我来访者的生活中时
and the results started to change, to happen.
这个结果就是开始发生了改变开始发生了。
And the clients started to change very quickly.
来访者呢，他们开始非常快速的就发生了改变。
That's why I decided to study more and to use it in my practice.
然后呢，我就开始在我的实践中更多的开始去学习它，然后去练习它。
That's my experience.
这是我的经验。
Okay, let's talk a bit about anxiety.
好，那现在我们谈论一些关于焦虑。
So anxiety is fear with an obscure edge, and is generally related to the future.
焦虑呢是一种模糊的恐惧，它通常呢与未来有关。
There are other definitions in other places about all this.
在其他领域呢，就是关于这个焦虑也有一些不同的定义。
But the person is worried about the future.
但是这个人对于未来的这个对未来担忧。
It may be linked to a specific situation.
它可能与一些具体的情况有关。
It can be generated in the face of concern about how the person will look or behave, for instance.
它也可以说呢，比如说，它也可以与一个人在关注，在他如何看和行动的时候产生。
But sometimes it can arise without being associated with anything.
有时候它也可能会出现，而且不与任何事情有关。
It may arise for good reason or simply in one's imagination.
它可能是由于一个很合适的理由出现，也有可能就是只是在想象中。
I could be worried about something that is very real.
我可以对一些非常非常现实的东西感觉担心。
Or I could just imagine something that is not real, but it becomes real to me.
我也可以想象一些其实并不真实的东西，但是它对我来说是那么真实。
Okay, can we change? Okay, again, I'm going to invite you to go through the process with me, and don't worry. I'm going to, those of you are free to take pictures, of course, but I'm going to share the PowerPoint with you, and it's my pleasure to do that. And I love teaching NLP because it's about helping people to feel better.
好，接下来呢，我要邀请大家进行一个过程，一个体验。当然，大家可以随意的拍照，因为我很高兴跟大家分享 NLP 的内容。
So, who here feels anxious about something apart from me?
所以这里有谁感觉对一些事情感觉焦虑的？
We all feel that sometimes. One of the things about anxiety
所以关于这个焦虑呢，其中有一个事情是
is that it tends to cause a physical symptom.
就是说它通常呢有可能会引起我们生理的一些症状。
Sometimes the person feels something in the body while he's worrying about something.
有的时候一个人他就感觉他的体内好像有一些什么东西，然后他就对一些事情感觉特别的担心。
And so this is the technique created by Richard Bandler. I'm going to invite all of you to take part again.
所以呢，这就是 Richard Bandler 他创立的一个环节，我邀请大家一起来体验一下。
You may or may not close your eyes. It doesn't matter.
你们可以继续闭你们的眼睛，也可以不闭，就是没关系。
Let's think one last time about this anxiety that you are experiencing.
让我们来想一下你最近就最后一次，就最近一次你体验到那种深刻的那种焦虑的那个体验的时候。
The best way to do it
最好的最好的我们所能做的最好的方法是
is to pretend that you are living once more the anxious experience, the moment where you are experiencing the anxiety. Pretend that you are back in time, reliving it again, living it one more time, one last time.
就是假装你自己好像真的重新回到了当时那个你最近最焦虑的那一次，你真的重新又经历了它。
Think about the experience as if you were there again, in the same context, feeling the same thing and noticing where in your body you feel the anxiety.
所以想象你当时回到了当时那个场景，用同样的那个当时的事情，然后你当时同样的那个焦虑，然后同样你体内那个不适的那些感受。
Before we start, it's always important to ask.
在我们开始之前呢，通常我们有一些重要的问题需要先提出来。
We ask to ourselves,
我们要问自己。
What is this part, this inner part, trying to communicate with me?
我内在的这一部分，它在试着跟我沟通什么呢？
When I do the anxiety process,
当我在做这一份焦虑的这个过程的时候
let's say that there is an inner part creating the experience.
我们可以看到是我们内部的这个过程，我们内部的这一个部分，它创造了这个过程。
What is this inner part trying to communicate through the anxiety experience?
而我们内在的那一部分，它到底想通过这个焦虑告诉我们什么，与我们沟通什么？
What's important about it that I was not paying attention?
有哪些重要的事我没有注意到呢？
What could I learn if I decide to learn something else now?
如果我现在决定我要学习到一些 了解到一些其他的事情，那我可以了解到什么？
So think about the experience of being anxious happening in your body.
所以想象一下，当你是那个感觉到那个焦虑的感受的时候，它当时那个正在发生了什么？
Try to identify where in your body you are feeling anxiety.
试着去识别出、指出你身体的哪一部分正在感受到你的焦虑。
All sensations happen in the body,
通常呢，它有可能这个在
all the sensations happen in the body, inside the body.
所有在你身体内的那些感受、感觉，
They have a movement, a direction. Sometimes it goes like this, for instance.
他们其实都有他们的运动的一些轨迹，或者他们都是一直在不同的动的。比如说，他们会在你的胸前这样一直在转。
Sometimes it goes clockwise, counterclockwise, depending on the person.
所以他们有的时候顺时针转，有的时候逆时针转，这取决于不同的人。
Sometimes it bites here or here, something like that.
有时候它就紧紧的，就是贴在你的身上这里，或者你的胸口，或者是你的胃上。
Try to identify your experience when you are feeling anxiety. Where in your body you feel what you feel? Where?
所以试着去识别出来，你感觉到你的那个感受的地方在哪里。
And then I want you to imagine that red arrows are pointing the way of the anxiety. Let's say it goes like this. Imagine red arrows making this way. You close your eyes and you imagine the feeling, and you imagine that the arrows are making the same path, the same way.
然后接着我邀请大家去想象，就是你的那个感受的运动的轨迹，然后你想象有一个红色的箭头在随着你那些感受在流动。
Now you are just going to see where it's happening, and you are going to illustrate with the red arrows.
现在呢，我希望你们呢想象那个感受它到底在哪里，然后希望你们能够就是慢慢画出来这个运动的红色箭头运动的轨迹。
You think about the experience,
你考虑的是这个体验
where in your body it happens,
你想象你想一下你当时那份经历，然后呢，这份焦虑在你身上哪里发生？
and imagine the arrows doing whatever the movement it is.
然后想象一下这个你的这个红色的箭头，无论是它是怎么运动的，想象它那个运动的轨迹。
It's going to be different for every person.
对每个人来说，它都将是不同的。
After some time imagining the arrows inside your body,
在你想象这些红色箭头运动的轨迹之后，
I want you to imagine that those arrows start to go outside your body. The same thing, the same movement. It was inside and starts to go outside.
我希望你们呢，接下来想象的这些红色的箭头，它们离开了你的身体，然后在你的体外，但是它们的运动轨迹是一样的。
But outside, it keeps doing the same thing that was doing inside.
但是在你体外呢，他们在做跟你在你体内一样的事情。
And for a moment, you will observe the arrows floating in the space, doing the same thing.
然后，比如说，你可以观察到那个箭头在你的体外，然后它在做和你体内一样做的事情。
The same thing that was happening inside.
就是你在体内发生的那些。
And you start to notice
然后你开始注意到，
that the arrows in the space,
就是在这个空间的这些箭头，
it starts to decrease the velocity. It goes slow and slow, still red, but it's going slower and slower.
它仍然是红色的，但是你想象它慢慢注意到它慢慢的变慢。
It's getting slower and slower until it stops.
它越来越慢，直到它停下来。
And now you see a frozen red arrow or red arrows in the space in front of you.
接着，然后你就可以在你面前的空间看到一个静止的、固定不动的那红色箭头的。
Take some time to observe this change now.
然后呢，观察现在的这个改变，现在发生的改变。
And now, you will imagine that this red arrow becomes a blue arrow.
现在呢，你注意到这个红色的箭头，它慢慢变成了蓝色的箭头。
And very important,
而非常重要的一点是，
it will start to move again.
它又开始运动了，
But it will move in the opposite direction.
但是它开始向反方向运动。
For example, if it was going clockwise,
比如说，如果它之前是顺时针转的，
now it's blue and it's going counterclockwise.
现在呢，它变成了蓝色，然后它开始逆时针转。
If it was going inside,
如果它之前是试着要往你的体内走，
now it has a color blue and it goes outside.
那么现在呢，它变成蓝色之后，它开始往你的体外走。
Whatever it is, you are going to reverse the process.
无论它是什么，你只需要反转它之前的那个运动方向。
And it starts to move again in space, but reversed.
然后它就在你面前这个空间，它又开始运动，不过呢是之前反转的方向。
The same velocity, but reversed.
同样的那一个轨迹，不过呢是反转的。
In blue, they are blue now.
颜色也变成了蓝色。
And now we are going to observe it changing completely. Outside first. You're going to observe it reversed in space.
现在呢，你将观察它在这个空间上，然后反转的运动。
And you will start to imagine that you're going to bring it in again.
然后你试着想象把它重新拉回到你的体内。
That's right. Keep bringing it back. Now the arrows are blue and it's reversed.
做得很好。然后现在呢，你把它拉回到你的体内，然后你体内那个箭头现在是蓝色的，然后呢是反转的方向。
When I count to 3, when I say 1, 2, 3, on the number 3, you will imagine that it will go inside again, but reversed and blue.
所以当我一会儿会数1、2、3，当我数到3的时候，你就想象那个你面前的图像重新拉回你的身体，然后是蓝色的反转的方向。
Okay? 1, 2, 3.
1、2、3，
Put it back in,
把它拉回你的体内。
but notice that it's different because it's reversed.
但是注意到它跟之前是不同的，因为它开始反转，
It is blue,
它也是蓝色的，
and the direction is the opposite.
它的方向是反的。
And you just let it happen inside this way.
就让它在你的体内以这种方式开始发生。
You know that it's reversed.
你知道它是反向的。
While you feel this in another way, while you feel it different inside,
所以，当你觉得它在体内是反向的时候，你感觉是什么样的？
bring to your memory a moment in which you were able to deal with things in a better way.
想象你的那个时刻，就是当你可以以一个更好的方式来处理生活中的那个让你焦虑的那个时刻。
Past experiences in which you were able to deal with things in a better way.
想象那个，在你生活中你可以以一个更好的方式去处理生活问题的时候，那个最棒的时候的体验。
With something different from anxiety, whatever it is for you.
那个处理的方式呢，除了无论它是什么，只要它不是焦虑，就除了用焦虑的方法处理的之外的方法。
Just remember those experiences in which you were able to deal with things in a healthier way.
只要记住你这个处理这些事情的方式呢，是更加健康的方式。
Pretend you are there again, reliving this again.
所以，假装呢，你就在当时的那个场景里，然后我们重新的经历了这些，
And feel in your body
然后去感受你的体验，
how it is to deal with things in another way.
让他以另一个方式来处理这些事情的时候，感觉是什么样的？
And keep expanding the reverse movement more and more and more.
然后试着把你体内的这个运动让它扩展，越来越扩展，越来越扩展，
Make it bigger, faster, stronger.
让它更快，然后更强，
More and more.
转得更加的快。
Keep breathing. And try to think other ways to approach this subject related to anxiety.
所以就保持你的呼吸，然后想象一下这个跟你焦虑有关的那个事情，然后你以一个这个更健康的方式去处理。
How do you feel now about this experience?
所以对于这个体验，你现在的感受是什么样的？
Is that better? Is it better?
是不是感觉好一些？
Okay, those who are with the eyes closed, you may open your eyes.
所以现在呢，你们可以把眼睛睁开了。
While you do this process, do you feel anything different? Is it better? Do you feel better about the anxiety? I know that you have the things to solve in your life related to the problem.
所以呢，当你做完这个体验之后，你有没有感觉更好一些？然后你有没有因为我知道你们生活中应该也会有让你们焦虑的事情。
But my question is, are you feeling better now about dealing with that, about starting something different about it?
但是我的问题呢，就是我想问大家的就是，在你们开始尝试做一些新的方式之后，你们有没有感觉好一些？
Who here is feeling different for the best about it?
这里
Just so that I can know.
这里
Is
是
it better? What changed?
Feels more relaxed. I
Okay.
think it's a kind of self-hypnosis.
Yes, this is another way to start dealing with things in another way, because anxiety is related to things you feel.
我想这就是一个很好的你们用那个方式来处理问题的方法，因为焦虑其实是与我们如何去感受我们的经历有关。
Basically, you identify the anxiety and how it is happening in your body, the direction, the movement.
基本上，首先基础呢，就是你先去感受那份焦虑，它在你体内是怎么运动的，它的轨迹是什么。
You illustrate it with red arrows.
然后你用红色的箭头呢，把它给标记出来。
You notice the movement, where in your body it's happening.
你注意到呢，它是在哪里运动，然后它是怎么运动。
And after observing it for a while,
然后在你观察它一会儿之后
You imagine that it goes outside your body and do the same thing outside.
然后你想象嘛，它慢慢的离开你的身体，到你的体外，然后在体外做同样的运动。
So you start thinking about it in another way.
然后呢，你开始想，就是开始用另一个方法来看待它。
Because for NLP, thinking is about structure, not just content.
因为在 NLP 的观点里呢，看待问题的方式并不仅仅只限于内容，它更多的是关于那个建构结构。
You keep repeating the anxiety, but when you first see it outside, it starts to change. Something's different. You dissociate, you see outside, and it's different outside.
那你之前呢，在体内一直重复着你的这份焦虑，但是当你把它放到体外，然后去看待它的时候，事情就会变得不同。
And then you make it go slower and slower until it stops.
然后你让它变得越来越慢，越来越慢，直到它停止。
And the red arrow become a blue arrow.
然后这个红色的箭头呢，变成了蓝色，
And it start to reverse the movement
并且
in the other way.
它的运动方向呢也开始反转。
And then you observe it totally different outside.
然后你就会观察到它在外面是完全的不同。
And you bring it back inside, different.
然后你把这个不同的东西重新的拉回到你的体内。
And expand it, make it bigger, stronger, but reverted,
然后呢，
reversed.
然后你把它拉回到你的体内，让它更高、更快、更强。然后呢，就扩展它，不断的扩展它。
And you bring memories about having dealt with things in another way, in a better way, in the past.
然后呢，你就会对于这个，
You bring memories about dealing with problems in a healthier way from the past.
然后你就会从这个将你过去的那个记忆，以一个更加健康的方式带回来。
So first you have another something else happening inside, and you reinforce with other memories.
用以前的沉重的记忆来加深你现在这个反转的这个良好的感受。
哦，对，就是以前成功的记忆来加深你这个反转的这个感受。
And after all that, you start thinking about other possible ways to deal with the old problem.
然后在那之后呢，你就可以开始去想怎么用一些其他的方式来处理你那些旧的问题。
This is one of the techniques that I use most in my practice for people nervous with anxiety, and it's very, very good. Not that I'm
对，这就是我在我的大部分咨询中都会用到的一个技术，它尤其是对于那些害羞、紧张啊或者是焦虑的人。
it gives to the person the power to deal with their problems in another way, not just repeat the process again and again and again.
它给一个人一份力量，就是他可以以另一个方式重新处理他的那些问题，而不是不断重复过去的那个模式。
And again, I'm not telling the people what they should think about. I don't say, don't do this in your life, do that. I'm not saying that.
当然，我一直在做的是让人们自己决定他想要怎么做，引导人们以一个不同的方式处理。我没有告诉他说你要这么做，或者你不要这么做。
I just invite you to think in other ways with another structure.
我只是在邀请你以另一个结构、另一个建构去用另一种方式来看待问题。
And everyone will have a unique experience.
而每个人呢都有自己独特的经验。
Is there any question that you'd like to make, to ask?
有任何什么问题？
在不了解这个内容这个方面，就好像对意义不用太关注，是吧？
So if we don't have to pay attention to content. So that's it mean that we don't, it's not necessary to pay attention to the meaning of the experience for us.
It's not that we don't have to pay attention to the content.
It's not, sorry.
I'm not saying that we don't have to pay attention to the content.
当然我并不是说我们不必关注到那个内容。
When the client is in my office,
有一个，当那个来访者在我的办公室的时候，
I ask him about the content and the meaning of the experience.
我会问他这个经历的内容是什么，也会问这个对他的意义是什么。
But I also work with the structure of his experience.
但我也会跟他的这个经历，他对此的这个建构性的工作。
Because for Richard Bandler specifically and for NLP,
因为
for Bandler and for the NLP,
因为对于Richard Bandler 和 NLP 来说，
when you change the structure, you change the content.
当你改变了你这个建构，你就改变了那个内容。
And after that, we can talk about the content, the experience, the client's change, and so on. But you teach him something new.
然后在那之后呢，我们就可以跟来访者去讨论他的那个内容，但是那个其实已经发生了改变。
There is a saying in NLP that you give responsibility to the client.
就是说，你把这个责任交还给这个来访者。
I don't know how it's going to translate, but responsibility,
Responsibility.
it's ability to respond.
哦，不是，就是说回应的能力，对吧？
And you generate an experience
你
to the
对
client.
you generate.
You invite the client to a new experience to respond in another way.
就是你邀请来访者以另一个不同的方式来回应他的这个体验经历。
Okay. We should work with the client, with content, with many other things, but this is something specific to change a feeling that sometimes it keeps going.
我们是可以那个跟来访者就他们的内容去了解，但是呢，这个 NLP 的我们的这个练习，它可以处理那些在我们体验一直发生的那些感受。
So when I feel anxiety in my stomach, are there only two ways to direct the directions of anxiety, the clockwise and the unclockwise?
In many ways, you have to look for your experience. That's how I was illustrating the experience. Sometimes it goes like this. Sometimes it goes in, sometimes it goes out, from left to right to left. You have to find, sometimes the person has an experience that is so strong, and there's 3 places with different movements. You shouldn't work with more than three movements, but sometimes I work with one here, another one here, another one here in the back, and I put it all out, revert everything, put it all back in, revert it, and but don't work with more than 3 places. Sorry, I kept talking. Okay, let's do it in parts.
It's exciting. It's just body.
Sometimes the client the client will have more than one place. They will feel things in different parts of the body.
所以刚才朱老师问的就是，难道就比如当我焦虑的时候，我感觉胃会不舒服，我会感觉那个运动在胃里，那难道就是不是只有那个顺时针或者逆时针这2个方向？然后老师说会有不同的方向，我觉得大家应该都看懂老师明白。
You actually need no interpretation.
And so you can work with more than one place. You can work with no more than 3. One here, another one here, sometimes something in the back. And you choose 3 movements, the 3 strongest one, and you put it all outside red, reverts, it freezes the three.
所以就有的时候，其实它不只是在那个一处的体验，就我们可能感受到它在很多地方，但是我们就抽取其中3个，就不要超过3个最强的那份体验，然后把它放到体外，然后看它们不同的那个运动方案，再把它全部反转过来，然后再拉回体内。
I think she explained everything. Any other question? Please.
我想问他老师，就是说，通常您是在什么样的一个阶段和对方来做这样的一个体验？就是在他刚来的时候，他充满焦虑的时候跟他来做，还是说您已经和他建立了一些了解和咨询关系？还是在这个是什么时间我们要感兴趣？第二个是不是所有的来访者他都愿意接受这样的一个体验？因为很多人他是很难去感受自己的身体，所以我不知道您是要跟他来去商量说，我要跟你做这个体验，还是说你就说这就是我的方法？谢谢。
第一个问题。
是哦，
做体验，咨询什么阶段来做这个体验？
对，I want the first question that I want to know that so which phrase we so which stage we do this we like
Technique.
we use this technique so is when the client they come to our consultation we do this to him or when after we have built a counseling relationship together. So which stage we use this?
I don't think there is one specific answer to this question.
我想这个，比如那第一个问题好像没有一个特定的。
It depends. Depends on your rapport with the client.
它取决于你和这个来访者之间你们的这个
关系。
关系。
With the interaction with the clients, with clients that I've been seeing for a while. I just do it when I'm anxious, so I do it. Sometimes when I know a client for some time.
所以有的时候呢，比如说有些时候，比如说当我已经跟这个来访者接触过一段时间之后。
And the clients know that I work with NLP, so they come for me because of NLP, because they don't want to old therapeutic methods.
这个来访者他其实他之前他是知道我就是做 NLP 的，所以他就是过来找我，就是想做 NLP。
They expect me to do this kind of thing to them.
他很期待呢，我能跟他做这些技术。
But I think you should check if the client is open to this kind of intervention.
那我觉得你可以先就是试试看，就检查一下这个，检视一下这个来访者他是否对这个 NLP 这些技术是开放的态度。
You can even say you don't need to use the name NLP if you don't want.
就是如果你不想这么做，其实你都可以不必告诉他这个 NLP 这个名字。
Sometimes they say I don't want to do NLP.
有的时候他们说我不想做 NLP。
And I say, okay, let's do some creative visualizations.
然后我说OK， 那我们就做一些创造性的视觉的体验。
Because that's what it is.
因为那其实就是 NLP。
It depends. This is for a moment in which the client is kind of somatizing in the body, feeling things in the body. So when the client is feeling something like that, you give options.
所以呢，比如说我们刚刚这个练习，就是当来访者真的在体验，他就感觉到有一些很多不舒服的东西的时候，其实这个练习就可以有效的帮助他去。
You know, sometimes I have a few clients who are not very open to exercises like this.
你知道，有的时候我也有几个来访者，他其实对此 NLP 这些部分并不开放。
And I tell them a story.
然后我告诉他们一个故事。
I have a client who had something in the body going in a way.
我有一个来访者呢，他就是体内就有一个某些方式那个转动 痛的那个感受。
And I ask the client to feel it in the other way.
我有一个待会儿他就有那个躯体化的那个感受。
And I ask that client to feel in the other way.
那我就会邀请那个来访者呢，以另一个方式去感受。
That Milton Erickson did that a lot. He told lots of stories, supposedly about other clients.
所以呢，这个Milton
Erickson.
埃里克森他就会做这么多，他讲很多很多的故事。
Stories that were related to that client's problems.
大部分都跟来访者有关，比如说，一些来访者，比如跟那个来访者的那个问题有关。
So NLP is communication.
所以，NLP 其实是一个沟通。
Keep talking about changing structures, and it will happen anyway.
不断的去谈论，就是去改变你体内的那个，不断的改变你对事情的那个建构、那个结构，然后改变就真的会发生。
Or you can insert it with your therapeutic techniques. You can use it together with your own therapeutic techniques.
所以，但是你也可以把它跟你自己那个治疗技术、治疗流派结合在一起。
Okay? Any more questions?
我有一个就是，当你说红色的箭头、蓝色的箭头的时候，我对这两个箭头有一个建构。我直接说明你先发在发给他们。
So when you're talking about the red arrows and the blue arrows, I have a structure about them.
我建构的是红色箭头，是不是指的就是身体里的那些焦虑、那些紧张、那些不安、那些就是焦虑的症状？
So my structure is that if the red arrows is the such the uncomfortable feelings in our body, such as the anxious, nervous, and those emotions.
当我把红色箭头带出体外之后，再回归的那个蓝色箭头。我的建构是那个平静，是舒服，或者是一种接受。
So when I put that red arrows outside my body and then bring the blue arrows back to my body, I feel calm, down, and so my structure to I think the structure I give to the blue arrows is that they represent the calm and the acceptance.
I don't know exactly.
The construction. That's the construction. It's constructing. That's the construction, not structure.
Yes, you change the structure. You presuppose a change.
He's saying my construction. 我把它理解为它的建构。
The construction 就是 I think she said a construction about the red arrows and blue arrows, and the red arrows the construction is that the anxious, nervous, those emotions in our body, and the blue arrows the constructions is that they means calm and acceptance. Is that right?
Well, I never asked Richard Bandler about this, but I can only imagine.
我以前没问过那个 Richard Bandler 的这个问题，但是我可以想象一下答案。
That red is usually associated with anger, and you know the bulls. If you put a red cloth, the bulls go to the cloth, and anger. It's sometimes associated, and blue.
然后那个红色的箭头，我想象它就是，我觉得它就像你说的那个建构成那个，就是愤怒，就比如说一头愤怒的公牛那样的感觉。
And blue is always associated with relaxation. Some people use the color blue in hospitals and in staffs, in doctors' clothes, because it's known that blue relaxes people.
而蓝色就代表一种放松，因为我们知道在一些比如说医院啊什么，那个的墙都是蓝色的。
That's why I believe he chooses the colors red and blue, I guess.
这是我猜，我想这是他为什么用蓝色和红色这两个颜色。
那如果至于这个，我再一个补充是，那我们要是在跟案主在一起做这个咨询的时候，实际上那个箭头的颜色是随意都可以用，不见得只是红色或者蓝色，我可以随着案主他希望那个是什么颜色，他感受到是什么颜色，然后他进入又是什么颜色，这样的是不是也是更适合案主的？我是有这样的一个想法。
So if I'm working with the client, so if the color depends on the client himself. If he wants the color to be other colors, and will it change? Can they change the color and to the color they wish?
Yes, I believe you can. I believe you can ask the client what is the color that you associate with anxiety, for instance.
是的，我觉得你可以呀，就是我觉得你可以问问这个来访者，他想把这个跟焦虑有关的这个感受画成什么色。
And which is the color that you associate with the opposite of that?
那跟这个色对应的那个反向的颜色，他想选择什么色？
The important thing is that it's clear for the client.
更重要的是呢，对于来访者来说，这是一个清晰。
Okay. So I think it's the time for lunch. Thank you very much, and see you in the afternoon session.